Hey guys, this is Brett Young, Taylor Young, and Rod Erb, and you're tuned in to the Be Extraordinary podcast with Erb and Young. Real conversations about business, leadership, and personal development. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Be Extraordinary podcast. This is Brett Young. I'm with Taylor Young and our special guest today. You guys are in for a massive treat. Before we turned on the camera and the mic here, I think we could have shot like an entire other podcast, and I had to stop Chris because I was like, hold on a second, there's too much juice here. We're giving away all this stuff and we're not getting it on camera. So I think we had to like cut our conversation like completely half just to get it on camera. So if you're listening today, I would just encourage you to strap in, man. The gentleman that you're going to hear from today has been dropping dimes in this studio for the past 15 minutes, and we haven't even got started yet. So Chris, thank you so much for being here, man. I wanted to take a second to give your background and your bio, and then we're just going to get right into it, because I asked Chris before we started, I said, hey man, you've done a lot in your career. You're doing a lot in your career. There's a lot of different branches of your avenue of making an impact. Why are you doing this? What is your special area? And he just said, man, you know what? I realized through this process and through this journey that I'm not making as big of an impact on the people that have been where I had been 8, 10 years ago, and I want to do that, and this is my opportunity to do that. So, and then he went into some life experience that I hope we get into today. So whether you are in early in your career, whether you are in the middle of your career and you're looking to go to the next level, and maybe you've met some challenge, the best thing that I have found in that process is meeting someone who's met that type of friction and shares the ways that they have overcame it. So we've got Chris Welton on the show today. He's the Vice President of Sales of the Certified Mortgage Planners. He's a speaker. He's a coach. He's a podcaster. He does coaching. I mean, he is in the real estate world, the leadership world, the communication world, and the achievement world. And the stuff that he's done and is continuing to do is something that obviously the guys in here, we have a tremendous amount of respect. So Chris, thank you so much for being in the show. I know you're super busy. You got to hop on a plane here and go do another podcast in Tennessee. Thank you so much for stopping by and spending some time with us today.
Man, thank you. The pleasure's all mine. And that was a great introduction. I'd like to hear that sometimes.
Hey, man.
Yeah, I got chills actually from listening to some of that stuff. But yeah, I'm super excited to be here. I know we had to reschedule previously, so thanks for getting the calendar back open for me. And I'm excited to jump in. You know, you're right. I wish we would have had the mic going a little bit earlier, but there's a lot of that stuff, and I really vibe when I get in the same room with people who have similar interests and goals, right? So I think that's what drew us together. We have a lot of connections through business and just some similar friends. So I'm really excited. Let's get rolling.
Yeah, man. Anybody who studies the science of achievement and can nerd out on just the process of becoming better, man, those are the people that I want to be around. And just from being around you just for the last 15 minutes, I can just tell you, just oozes out of you, man, just oozes out of you. So well, real quick, I wanted to kind of start off with, you know, you're jumping on a plane, you're headed up to Tennessee to record a podcast with somebody who's someone who has a lot of respect in the space, and I wanted to share that. I wanted to kind of touch on that real quick before we get too deep on. Share with us what you're doing with your podcast. Share with us what you're doing as far as your coaching, your speaking engagements. You know, what are you up to these days to make that bigger impact that you've been talking about?
Yeah, so for me, at first I realized that I was very passionate about sharing my story. And what happened, I'd spent a year ago in January, I was in South Florida with a gentleman by the name of Rene Rodriguez. He wrote a book called Amplify Your Influence. That book helped me realize how important my story was, and that I needed to be authentic to who I was, and people would be attracted to that because they've had similar situations in their life. The cool thing was about being in that room and reading the book is I connected with other people with similar mindsets in that room. We're talking about a room with just 10 people in it for 2.5 days.
Oh, wow. That's real intimate.
Super intense 2.5 days. Brian Covey, who I'm going to go meet up in Nashville, who for his podcast, him and I became friends from the moment we met in that room. I had no idea who Brian was. I just walked into a room. He sat down next to me. We talked. Then the next day I realized he's a retired Major League Soccer player, Olympic soccer player, all these things. And we just hit it off and became friends and have been pretty consistent with communication since. I invested a lot in myself over the last 18 to 24 months because I realized that was the only thing I could control the rate of return on, is actually putting money into myself. So I went to multiple events, connected with people there. I realized that early on that I should always get the VIP ticket because those are the people I want to be with.
That's a nugget. You might want to write that down at home.
Yeah, get a pen and pad. I've got some stuff here you're definitely going to want to listen to or write down. So the other thing I learned is to always fly first class if it's available. And not because I'm bougie, but I am bougie. Like I'm a bigger dude, right? I'm 6'5", so I don't fit in the little seats very comfortably. And at this point in my life, I like to fly first class. But it's more about meeting the other people who fly first class, right? If I'm sitting on a plane next to a gentleman, chances are he's done well in his life if he's flying first class, or a woman. Anybody next to me, I can have that communication with. So I looked at those as opportunities. In October of last year, I went and spent a full day with a gentleman by the name of Bradley. Big podcaster, social media guy, and Renee Rodriguez. There was about 20 of us in this room all day. And I went there because I wanted to become a better speaker. And what did I need to do to grow my social media and to do those things? The first thing they said was create a podcast. So I created a podcast. And what you'll find, you'll hear me say this multiple times as we go through this conversation, I consider myself the king of R&D. What I mean by R&D is rip off and duplicate. Yes. So if you have something that I think that looks like it's going to work, I'm going to take it and make it my own. And I've got some really good stories we'll get into later on about that. But I realize that it's time for me, when people present an opportunity in front of me, I need to take advantage of it and run with it. And it took 48 years to realize that. I'm 50 now. But when I was 48, I realized that I had something special to share with people. And I needed to seek other people out that have done it.
That's amazing.
So that's how the podcast came about, the speaking opportunities, and I just continue to push every day to grow those.
Hey guys, Brett Young with the Be Extraordinary Podcast. I want to take a moment and just say thank you so much for listening. Without you guys listening, this wouldn't be possible. Appreciate you guys so much. If you have not subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, everywhere. You can also go to beextraordinarypodcast.com and all of the feed, or you can watch the video playbacks and subscribe to any whichever podcast feed that you enjoy most. Lastly, if you've not joined the Be Extraordinary community, please go to the bottom of the website. Go to beextraordinarypodcast.com. Go to the bottom. You will see the Extraordinary community right there through Telegram. You literally just click the button. It's free. There's a bunch of other amazing professionals and individuals that live by this philosophy, having incredible dynamic conversations about what they experience every day and becoming better. So again, thank you so much for listening. You guys rock. Be extraordinary. So, Chris, you're at this point in your career, you're leading, 40, 50 LOs and driving significant sales numbers in multiple different territories. You've obviously been very successful with what you've done with your craft. Now it seems like this desire, this internal desire to make an even bigger impact, not only just in the real estate space, but also in other different spaces. Was that something that was always innate? Or was that something that, when you heard that, it was like, oh, okay, this is new? Or has this always been something you've wanted to do and you're able to, you're finally in that the time in your career where you go, this is my time to really make it, really let it shine. Walk me through that.
Well, that's a great question. So I think it's multifaceted. I think I've always been, I coached children at young ages, my kids in sports and all that. And I really enjoyed teaching them and watching them grow. But then I'd always get sucked back into my business life. And for the longest time in my career, I was always chasing the next dollar. I've been very fortunate. I've made a lot of money over my lifetime and I've lost a lot of money too, but I've always figured out a way to make more. But when I realized it was more about helping other people get there, and Zig Ziglar has a quote that says, if you can get anywhere you want to go in life, if you help everyone else get there first. And I kind of embraced that, but I didn't give myself permission to do all that until I relocated to Florida about 7 years ago. And as I started learning different evolutions of business and more watching people on social media and reading, I'm like, gosh, there's more to it than just making money. What if I can help everyone else? And I started down that path, and then the next thing I know, I'm worried about making money again. I'm focused on making money. In 2020, I had a massive shift in my life, like most people did during COVID. But in 2020, I lost my son, CJ, passed away in July of 2020. He was only 18 hours old. And for the next 8 months, I went down a rabbit hole that I wasn't sure I was ever going to recover from. I gained excessive weight. I'm not a drinker, but I will eat and eat and eat. And I lost focus of what was important in my life. Wow. I grabbed my journal on March of 2021, I'm sitting on my back pool deck. I remember like it was yesterday. It's a Sunday afternoon, and I'm reading my journal from before my son passed. I'm going through all these notes and all these great things that I was going to do. And at the top of the page, it said, call Coach Bill Hart. He was my mortgage coach years ago in the industry. So I called Bill on a Sunday. I hadn't talked to him in years. I started coaching with him again the next week.
Oh, wow.
Excuse me. I gave myself permission to accept what had happened with my son and figured out I'm here to help other people get through certain things like that. And then it just kind of grew from there. Like felt I had a responsibility. We talked about that from Ed Milet, says we have a responsibility to help others where we were 2, 4, 6, 10 years ago. So that drew me into that part of it. And then I just kept pushing forward from there because I really became passionate about not just helping people who've lost children, but other people in certain situations of life. Like how different could things have been for me if I would have had this person in my life 10 years ago?
Right. Man. Wow. Yeah, that's, there's a lot to unpack there. And you know, those that are watching, you'll see, but obviously the podcast is called One Hand at a Time. And, you know, what is interesting about your journey is this, what could be perceived as a disability has become such an empowering thing for you to speak to having, you know, one hand, you know, so if you wouldn't mind for the listeners at home, because I look at those two situations that you also mentioned that you've lost everything. And I look at all these things that there's a pattern here, and there's a pattern of coming up against massive friction that would debilitate many people, and yet being able to use that as a reason instead of using it as an excuse. You know, maybe walk me through that a little bit so we can kind of unpack that.
Yeah. So it took me a long time growing up to realize that being born with missing my left arm was actually an advantage, not a disadvantage. Because, you know, when you're young as a kid, you want to be like everyone else, right? Well, I was never going to be like everyone else. So, but when you get older, we all want to be different and unique. So I have a huge advantage now when I walk into a room, besides I'm exceptionally good looking. When I walk into a room, people notice me, right? They notice me. So I use that tool to be able to get in front of the people I want to get in front of and have those conversations. I had to work harder than most when it came to sports because I had to outperform to get people to see who I was and my ability to get out there. I know I keep saying, that's horrible, but I've been able to connect with more people through social media now through different platforms. There's a charity called the Lucky Fin Project, which is for children who are born missing a hand or a limb, fingers, and connect with them to talk to their kids and help them. And then I connect with other athletes who are amputees. So I hook up with, I've been able to connect with Logan Aldridge, who's a one-arm Peloton athlete. I was just at the one-arm golf Winter Nationals with him over in Tampa a couple weeks ago. And I think about how we can positively affect the kids who were where I was when I was a kid with one arm, now with social media and everything else.
Right.
So if you'll see on my social media page, a lot of what I post is me working out.
I see that.
Doing adaptive workouts, right?
Yep.
And I do that because I want people to see what's possible with those things, right? So
is that something that, looking back on your childhood, did you have any examples like that? Is that something that wasn't readily accessible? So you think to yourself, man, there's a kid out there that needs to see, like, hey man, like you can rip it up just like I'm ripping it up.
Yeah, there wasn't that. And when I get passionate, I sweat. So you can see that I'm like the old basketball coach that'll sweat through my suit.
Let's go. Let's get it.
So the only example I had of that as a kid was a guy named Jim Abbott. So Jim Abbott was a baseball player. Most people don't know if they weren't in my generation. He pitched for University of Michigan, one hand, and he pitched for the New York Yankees. And he threw a no-hitter with one hand.
Wow.
So that was my...
If our business partner was here, God bless his soul, he's a Michigan guy. I have to say, go blue. He would say go blue at this point. So
for sure,
he would know Jim Abbott for sure. He's a Michigan man too.
Yeah, Jim Abbott was the only example that I had at that time because again, we didn't have social media. You know, there wasn't a lot of youth sports being televised. Like now, you can watch stuff all over the place, right? So I had just that example. But what I did have was I had a stepfather who in some areas wasn't that great, but he did see athleticism in me. Like, he was a big athlete. So he would work with me, and we would play catch every day after school so I could get it down and do the things I wanted to do. Then I grew up in a really tight-knit community, Kingswood subdivision in Orlando, right outside College Park. And we played sports all the time, right? Like wiffle ball almost every day, or basketball or football. And I just became better at repetition on that.
Right.
And then I became confident. Sports helped me in so many ways. When I stepped on a basketball court, I didn't feel like I had one arm, right? I was a leadoff hitter on my baseball team most of my career.
Get out of here.
Right. So when I stepped on when I stepped up in the batter's box, I'm going to hit the ball, right? I played first base most of the time. I pitched as well.
Was that just innate, or did your parents, were they instilling that encouragement in you? Because like if I'm 12 right now, right, and I want to be like everybody else, and I know I'm not, right? That's got to be, from a psychological standpoint, that's got to wear on you a lot, right? You have these challenges from a physical standpoint that sometimes have got to just beat you down. You know, was that something that you just took a personal challenge to? Or did you have somebody in your life that was encouraging you? Was it just something about your competitiveness? Like what?
You know, I look back on it now, and I was talking with a guy named Damon West the other day, and Damon and I had a really beautiful conversation about angels in our lives. And I had a lot of angels in my life, but I didn't realize it until later in life that they were angels. So there was a lot of coaches that took interest in me, that wanted to help me because I had that attitude that I wanted to win and I wanted to do the work and push hard. So they always found out ways to fit me into a lineup and give me the confidence to do it. So I can't say there was just one thing that did it.
But like that's a clue too right there. So like that's a subtlety that's missed. Someone says, hey man, how do I, number one, I heard get in the right room, right? Proximity is everything. Number two, you know, like your willingness to win attracts the right mentors, attracts the right people to you, right? Like you're just the tenacity and competitiveness of you wanting to win and putting in the work ethic inherently attracts the right people into your life. So that to me is, I mean, that's a clue, you know, like attitude is everything, but it sounds cliche, but you know, it's where a coach goes, man, there's something different about that kid, you know?
Yeah. The coach shows up when the student is ready, kind of thing.
Yeah, and my coaches saw the difficulty I was having at home with some situations, and they always took me in and gave me rides. And we talked about Jason Purcell earlier. His dad always made sure I got to practices. And then I had another guy that was real good friends of mine, Frank Casillo. His dad was the vice principal at Bishop Moore, but I knew them since we were kids. They'd pick me up and get me to the sporting events. So people took me in under their wings and gave me the opportunities to go shine. But I had to be focused and want to do those things, and I wanted to win. The cool thing is that the bar was set really low. People didn't expect for me to do well, right? So I didn't have that stress or the pressure that kids have today. Like, oh no, you better get back out there and hit those free throws, right? So it was so awesome when like we would go play in an all-star tournament and I would get up and I would get a hit. Right? People like, they'd never seen me before. Everybody else around the league had seen me. I had a friend of mine, we've parted ways since, but when we were little kids, he was about 3 years younger than me, Wesley. And Wesley and I would get in when I was 16, we'd get in my mom's car and we'd drive to the most competitive basketball courts in Orlando. Okay. So at 16, I was 6'4", about 160 pounds, but I could jump out of the gym and I could shoot from anywhere. Wesley was 13 and one of the best point guards you'd ever seen. So we would go to these courts and we'd get next.
Wow.
And we would run on these guys.
That's sick.
They wouldn't expect it. They wouldn't guard me. They'd think I'd lay back. And then if I dunked the basketball, then they're like, okay, well, we better guard this guy, right? Or I pull up and shoot a shot from 25 feet. It's so different than what it is now because people have these super high standards for their kids. And if the kid doesn't perform to that level, then the kid feels horrible about it. I'm not saying don't have high standards for your kids or people you love, but tell them that it's okay if it doesn't work out. I got so much confidence from going out there and having zero standards. For me, it worked. Now, I was able to translate that over into sales and business. I started selling for a company door-to-door candies and cookies when I was 11 years old.
Talk to me.
So they said I had to be 13. I got my mom to lie to them, say that I was 13, so I started working. So I'm selling cookies and candy door-to-door. The first place I went to was a car dealership. And I walked in and I did my spiel. I had my script down. I was ready to go. And I sold everything I had in my box.
Come on.
Right? So the first week I made about $170 at 11 years old. And I knew at that point, sales is where I needed to be. Like I had something for that. But I think that I got that confidence already from playing baseball and other sports. And I was able to translate that over into making money. And so I learned at a young age, sales was for me all day.
Scoreboard.
Yeah. And then I was able to parlay that into other things throughout my life, which got me into the car business at a young age because I thought everybody was rich that worked at car dealerships. I didn't realize that all the money they had was actually in their pocket. But back then I thought that was cool, when I was 11 years old. So
I had a question how it relates to, how you grew up and then also standards in business, right? So the idea of having low standards and then everything on top of that's gravy, positive reinforcement, low expectations, but you have that kind of internal motivation that drives you to get better. Do you approach that and how you coach LOs and how you, influence somebody in business? I mean, walk me through the low standard versus high standard, where you've kind of found some success and balance, maybe as it transitions to the sales world.
Yeah, so I think it's two different things, right? So when I coach somebody, I coach from a whole life perspective. Okay, I think that you have to be dialed in with your personal life first to be able to be successful with the business life, because you can be this great superstar here in business and just lay an egg at home and it doesn't work out. And then we're always doing the same things. So I talk a lot about standards over feelings. Do you know who Ben Newman is?
I don't.
Check Ben Newman out. He's going to be on my podcast in 2 weeks.
Cool.
He's the mental toughness coach for Alabama football and
kidding.
K-State. But so he talks a lot about standards over feelings. So for the personal side of things, let's have a little bit lower standard to stack the wins. And what I mean by that is daily routine. What's your daily routine? Well, if you don't have one, then let's create one. But it can be super simple in the beginning, right? You don't have to do the same daily routine I do. I'm a sicko, right? My daily routine's bananas, and most people don't even want to talk about it.
I want to talk about it.
Yeah, but I started with just getting out of bed on time,
right,
and not allowing myself to have 15 minutes to get in the shower and get to work, right? So I start with the coaching there. We talk about the daily routine and build standards there. On the business side, I have higher standards for people because there's money involved. If you're a paid coaching client of mine, we have incredibly high standards. 2 reasons. One is I want you to get the value out of your money that you're paying me. The other one is my brand relies on you being successful. If you're not going to be doing the work, I will fire you as a client. I just will. We need to be doing this for the right reasons. So I think the standards are about stacking wins. So let's start with our standards low, where we have none right now. You can't just, if you have a really bad diet tomorrow, you can't just go eat super clean one day.
Which is really cool because, we have a philosophy in here that we learned from mentors. It's like you have to meet people where they are and then bring them where you want them to go. I think a lot of people say, well, no, I'm not going to meet you where you are. You just need to come to where I'm at. And it's like, there's just too big of a gap there.
No. And what you need to realize as a leader and a coach is that most of the time, everyone else's maximum is your minimum. Because if it was the same, they would be coaching you.
Right.
Okay. And I had to learn that. My coach taught me that. Adam Roach is my personal coach right now.
Did that frustrate you in the beginning?
Oh my gosh, incredibly much so.
That. Yeah.
Because I'm the kind of guy that goes after it nonstop, always looks for the results, push. And it still frustrates me today. I still have to put myself in check. My number one person who puts me in check is my wife, and she'll be like, remember that. We have to meet people where they're at. We have to do this. So I have to look at that as far as what the growth potential looks like.
Was there something or someone that, obviously it's your wife, but was there some moment or some experience, or was it over time that you learned that this is not a healthy level of, this is not a healthy way to get a response from somebody? Because I'm asking you for more personal reasons too, because I think anybody that is driven is frustrated with that at times. It's like we put our own projections on people, and that's just not, I've just found that it's not, you're not going to get the result you're looking for,
Yeah. I think it's both. So I became frustrated for a long time. I was a sales manager of a car dealership at 19 years old.
Got it.
Okay. And I had super high standards. I sold a ton of cars. I was really at a different level, and I'd get frustrated a lot. And I didn't realize that until later in life. We learn a lot as we look back, man, boy, I kind of was a jerk back then. I should have looked at things differently. But just from hearing other people talk about meeting people where they're at and understanding that their maximum is your minimum, those were the things that over the last few years that have been very valuable to me and been great for my parenting with my kids, with my daughters, because one's an entrepreneur, one's got a degree in finance, and they don't think like me. And I have to be aware of that. Nobody else thinks like you either. We bring incredible value to them. But again, it also depends, and this is one of the big takeaways for me, is what season are they at in their life when you go to talk to them?
That's great.
I've gone to multiple conferences that were the same exact conference. I went to the same one 3 times. It's the same stuff, but I was in different seasons all 3 times, and I got different things from it.
Yep.
So I think it's important, again, meet them where they're at. I agree with that 1,000%. But the season that they're going through in their life, there's certain times where they don't need what you want to give them there.
Right. That makes sense. I've read a book twice or 3 times, and every time I read it, I learn something different, and the words don't change on the page, the message isn't different. It's static, but the way that I perceive it and receive it is completely different. And I think it's the same thing, right? It depends on what season I'm in when I read it the second or third time, right? That's a great perspective.
So bring somebody in, you meet them where they are, maybe start stacking wins. I kind of hear you, right? In personal, maybe a little bit more lenient, start a little bit smaller. In business, does it depend on what they say they want to, as far as where you start with the standards if you're coaching in LL?
It definitely depends on where they want. And I've learned a valuable lesson from that as well. I have one of my top producers, Terry. I don't know if you've met Terry before, but she's been dynamite producer for us.
Yep.
And I remember sitting down with her, going over her goals a few years ago. And she's telling me all these big numbers she's going to do. But at the same time, she's telling me how she's going to go to Bali for 2 weeks. She's going to go to Italy, like all these different places. I'm like, okay, I don't know how you're going to do that doing all those things. And she broke all those goals.
Wow.
She did.
She did it anyways. Yeah, she did.
She still went to Bali.
She went to Bali. She's a machine, dude. She works on the plane. She'll email me and she's like, "Oh, I'm in the, she went to Dubai too. She's like, I'm flying to Dubai."
Now I'm proving a point.
Yeah, she's emailed me. See, I told you this pre-approval. Like, yeah. So
I'm in first class. Yeah.
So that was a valuable lesson for me to realize that, hey, just because I'm the coach and the leader doesn't mean I'm right. It doesn't mean I'm right. Okay. But I think that I want them to put their goals out, but I will call them on their BS. And I will say that goal's not strong enough, or that I love that goal. So tell me what's important to you about that. And I think it's incredibly, that question, you're going to go really deep with those questions. Oh, I want to make $1 million a year. Awesome. I want you to make $1 million a year too. Why? What's so important about it? Well, I want more money. Great. What's so important about that? And then we just go deeper and deeper, and then you find out more and more about it. And then we back into it. I mean, I'm really big into reverse engineering things.
Yep.
I know where I want to go, but if I don't break it down, I'm never going to get there. If you see my goals year after year, before I learned those things, it was the same goal every year. I just never got there.
Yeah.
Selfishly, I'm asking some of these questions. So when you bring on, I love that, by the way, the reverse engineering, right? And then keep asking why, kind of that childhood curiosity of saying, hey, why, and then get to the bottom of it and the root and see if that's a strong enough reason that you're going to be able to do the activity that it takes to get there.
Because if it's an arbitrage number, it's an arbitrage activity. You're not gonna put in the activity required to get there. So.
Yeah, I'm just curious. So you've been doing this a long time. You've seen a lot of different, loan officers. I know you coach real estate agents too. Very similar. Do you know, or you think you know earlier, or do people change? And it sounds like people have probably surprised you, where you look at it and go, you know what, I don't know. I just met with that person. They said their goals, what they're willing to do. I don't know if they're going to make it. Or you probably had the experience where you go, oh, this is a home run. This person's going to crush it, and they don't. Do you play that game as far as, where you think hey, within 90 days, I can tell if somebody's going to make it, or whether they're going to be with this company kind of thing? I'm just curious.
Yes, I've been right and wrong on those multiple times. But for me, there's a connection there. How do we vibe together to be able to accomplish those goals? Like, are they serious about doing those things and doing the work? I feel really confident in the way that I coach and lead. If someone has high character and is willing to do the work, we're going to have 100% success. So usually when there's a failure there, it's the character wasn't as high as I thought it was. I didn't do as good a job of going deep with them in the beginning to make sure they are the right person. And they end up not doing the work. So we call what's called commission breath. I don't know if you guys have that in your industry or not, but we had a lot of that going on the last 6 months. Last year was really a tale of 2 years, right? The first 6 months was a normal year, and then the last 6 months was not a normal year. So people started taking shortcuts and not doing the work. And now they're seeing those negative results as we go through it. And we find out a lot about people when business is tough. Everybody can win when business is good. I'm fortunate to have several people that work for us that have had that realization, and they're putting in the work and they're doing something different and staying more focused on it. So I'd like to say I'm really accurate with that, but I do miss it from time to time. The cool thing is in our company, we have 3 leaders, right? We have myself, Jason Purcell, and BJ Sellers. And we're 3 of the most different people you could ever possibly work for. You know, there's a rule that says only 25% of the people that you meet will like you. So the way we look at it is we have 75% of the people covered. You know what I mean? So it just really depends on that.
That's funny. I never heard that before. I like that.
And then and especially in our industry, there's so much opportunity to make a lot of money. You see that a lot. People will make a lot of money and then they'll change everything they did to get there. And that becomes disappointing for me. That's one of the things that
rather
really
than doubling down on what it took.
Yeah, like
to continue to make
you're
more money.
So good at this. Stay there. Keep doing that, and we'll build a team around you to grow that and make more money if that's what you want to do, right? So I'm reading a book right now by Dan Martell called Buy Back Your Time. And he talks about the 10-80-10 rule. And essentially what that says is I'm really good at this one facet of my business. So I'm going to do the front 10% piece. I'm going to have someone else do all the 80% minutia stuff, calendar running, emails, all that stuff. Then I'm going to come in with the 10% behind and button it up. So I'm working on that right now, putting that in place in my business. I think the more producers that do that, the longer longevity they'll have. The struggle I see a lot of times is they win so much with the mortgage piece of it and they're making all this money. Now they want to become this totally other thing. And then they lose sight of what really built them to where they were.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think that's probably applicable in any business, man.
Yes.
You know, it's like something, you usually think it's a boredom thing, or do you think that's or maybe that's a thinking that maybe you're better than you are, or what do you think the driver of that is for someone who has some success and then stops doing what they were good at, and either, you know, they could still, you know, maybe have some success, but they're not at the same, you know, they're not at the same angle of growth, or they plateau. You know, what do you think the driver is there, or maybe it's just different per person?
I think it's just different per person, you know, and I'm really big at going back and looking at the history of who you are as a person and understanding where you learned your money habits and other things like that, and why are you reacting this way to this situation you're in. Now, we all get bored, I think, at some point, and we want to do other things, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not saying that, hey, stay in your lane, only do this. I'm just saying if you're really, really good at this part, if you're really, really good at this part, then jump all in on that part and buy back your time by hiring other people to do the things you don't like to do. Most people will change what they're doing because they don't like certain parts of it. Okay, well, hire somebody to do the part you don't like. I mean, it's really simple.
Yep.
And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm in the process of getting someone else to run my calendar, because I still run my calendar, which is crazy to think that, but I do.
So let's pivot for a second, because like there's a balance here that you know, of doing hard things and doing things that you just don't like doing, right? That comes with having any type of achievement that you're looking for, and then there comes that point where it's like, okay, I'm going to hire that out, or I'm going to find another solution for that. Like I saw that I looked on your Instagram, 75 hard. I think you did 48 for 48.
Yeah, I did the Goggins challenge.
So did I, which is dope.
I did 50 miles though, because I turned 50 that week.
Oh man!
Did you have all the blisters that come with it?
Oh, dude, I still have damaged toes, 2 toes with no toenails on them.
Dude, I went 48 miles and that was it. I was done, man. I had both of my feet were bleeding.
Oh, it was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad.
So for those that are listening at home, the 48 and 48, Chris, go ahead and tell them what that is.
So you run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. Again, 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So it's almost impossible to sleep because you're so amped from the last one to get to the next one. You don't want to miss it. The nutrition was where I missed out. I had a couple blips along the way with nutrition because I just didn't eat enough. I got cocky at one point, which was a bad thing to do. But what I did is 2 runs the first day and 2 runs the second day. I did 4.5 miles because I turned 50 that week, and my goal was to do the Goggins Challenge plus 2 and do 50 miles.
That's dope. Yeah, it's funny how like the last 4 heats for me all of a sudden it just became my feet ripped open, and like now it was like, okay, now you're in the battle. Like now you're in the challenge. It went from like, all right, I'm tired, I'm sore, to like, holy shit, like now I'm facing down the barrel of the gun. Like, are you going to get this done? Like, you know, and every step hurt, and every single heat was, you know, we were cool. We had some of the team show up. So every 4 hours for like the last 6 runs, one of the leaders of the team, whether it was in Melbourne, some of them, Amanda came over from Melbourne, Chris came over from Melbourne, some of the guys here in Orlando, they just showed up at the house. So it'd be 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Rod and I, our other partner, was running it with me. So it'd be 2 a.m. We'd come out our house, and there they were. One of them would be there, and they would run the 4 miles with us. And that was a really cool moment for me, because I learned that, like, the power of team, you know? Like, it was just us, and we're in it. Like, I had an accountability, and I had a partner, which is good because I wasn't doing it by myself. But then all of a sudden, you show up, you know, you're walking outside, and somebody's there to run it with you. And it was like, damn, all right, cool. You know, let's go. So it was a cool experience, man. It's cool that you did that.
Yeah. I had someone with me on every run.
Oh, there you go.
So someone with me. My wife did like 3 or 4 of them with me. But I had other individuals, people I worked with. BJ and Jason were with me. My sister-in-law, Robin, was there. I had some of my loan officers show up at midnight, you know, 4 a.m. Cool. I mean, they were there.
That's awesome.
And
so cool.
It was really cool for them to be part of it, but it was my sister-in-law saved me, because that 8 a.m. run the second day, I'm stretching before I leave. I'm really confident at this point. I think I'm 26 miles or 30. I remember I was way into it. I'm like, okay, I got this.
I'm good.
It's a piece of cake. We take off. I don't bring any food with me, and I'm a bigger guy, so I eat every 15 minutes when I'm out, right? And I'm a Clydesdale. I don't run fast, right? But I can take all you guys with me. So I've always done that when I've run long distance. I've always had, you know, jelly beans or whatever, something nutrition to keep me going. I didn't do it. I got 2 miles from the house, because I was just doing a 2 mile out, 2 mile in loop.
Did you cramp?
No, my blood sugar dropped.
Oh, shit.
And I got like delirious. And she was with me, and she called my wife. And my wife met us about 300 yards from there and brought me a liquid IV.
Oh, wow.
So I drank that. And then she brought me 2 glazed donuts. And that was good.
No kidding.
But I was burning, you know, like 10,000 calories a day, right? I mean, like, and you don't think about taking that in.
Yeah.
And I use that example for business a lot. We get a little cocky and arrogant, and then we're not doing the things consistently that got us there to stabilize us. And then we turn around and we've lost an account or a good referral partner or whatever. It was a big lesson for me. That Goggins Challenge was.
That's cool, man. That's cool. We share that. That was a unique experience, to say the least. And you learn a lot about yourself when you do hard stuff. You know, so why do you do that? Why do you guys do that? It's like, man, don't you want to see what you're made of? You know, don't you want to see what your limits are? Don't you want to push it? You know, and that just comes back down to doing the hard stuff. It's like every day I'm doing stuff that I don't want to do in business. Like, I love what we do. I really do. But to think that I love every aspect of what we do is not true. Like, it's just not. And I don't think I'll ever find something that every single thing that I love to do every day is just, I'm super, you know, it's just what I love to do. There are just some necessary evils that just come with it. And, you know, callousing the mind, as Goggins would put it, in regards to, like, look, man, this is just part of the process, has been really powerful for me. Because now, instead of being like, why am I doing this? Or why do I have to do this? It's like, well, this is just part of the deal. You know, like, this is just how it is. Like, you know, this is, in order for me to get to the good stuff, I just get to go through this, you know? So it's cool. Hey guys, Brett Young with the Be Extraordinary podcast. I want to take a moment and just say thank you so much for listening. Without you guys listening, this wouldn't be possible. Appreciate you guys so much. If you have not subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, everywhere. You can also go to beextraordinarypodcast.com and all of the feed, or you can watch the video playbacks and subscribe to any whichever podcast feed that you enjoy most. Lastly, if you've not joined the Be Extraordinary community, please go to the bottom of the website. Go to beextraordinarypodcast.com. Go to the bottom. You will see the Extraordinary community right there through Telegram. You literally just click the button. It's free. There's a bunch of other amazing professionals and individuals that live by this philosophy, having incredible dynamic conversations about what they experience every day and becoming better. So again, thank you so much for listening. You guys rock. Be extraordinary.
Yeah, we do a book club at work, and this morning It's on Tuesday mornings at 8:45, and we're reading Goggins' new book right now.
I heard that's really good.
It is way better than the last one. He has,
he
has a really good ghostwriter for this one.
Wow.
It's really good. Like, it's really good.
Wow.
And he was talking this morning's chapter about someone asked him if he was crazy, and he's like, no, I'm not crazy. I'm just willing to do more than you are. Mm-hmm. And I talked to people on our call about, there's 12 of us on there, I think, today. And I said, when people say you're crazy, it's because they are afraid to do what you're doing. And so many times in life, we're like, oh, man, that's crazy.
You're not.
No, it's crazy because you're not willing to dedicate and jump in and do it. I'm not saying there's not crazy people out there. Don't get me wrong on that. But it's, if you think about it, the people that are super successful in areas, there's always someone that says they're crazy.
Absolutely.
Well, because they're stretching it and doing something different. I did the Goggins Challenge to prove that I could do it. Yeah. For me, it wasn't for anybody else. I did 75 hard because I needed it. It reset me as a person. And I'm going to do it again later in March.
That's dope.
So I need those things in my life to reset myself so I can be the best version of myself to help everyone else that needs my help.
And that's,
I was just going to say,
there.
You don't even know, right? You did the 48 and 48, and then I think you were talking about it on a podcast that we did, and then our dad lost like 20 pounds over the next couple months. And he'd be like, Dad, wow, you look great, man. What's going on? He's like, ever since you guys did that, 48, man, I've been on fire for it. And it was, and he kept the weight off. Like, that was the thing that he, for whatever reason, borrowed a bunch of inspiration. You have no idea. You're not doing it for that, but it's just kind of a cool consequence of doing the work that's authentic to you, that you go, oh yeah, by the way, somebody's going to get this, and it's going to be life-changing.
Yeah. And I think it's important that, like, when I post stuff on social media, I'm not doing it to get a bunch of views or be a celebrity or anything else. I'm doing it that I hope someone else sees it that needs it. Right.
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing when you do a challenge like that and you share it with people. I'm not trying to brag about this fact that I did this, but if one person can take the action like your dad did, then that's a win for me. Right.
One of my favorite quotes, I'm sure Taylor will know it, but you mentioned it before we even turned the camera on, and it has relating to kind of your journey and where you sit and what you're trying, your passion for impacting those that you were once, or that were once in your same situation or progressing, was, I might butcher the quote, but we're most capable of helping the person that we once were.
Yeah.
Right. We're most capable of helping the person that we once were. And I think about social media and all that is to say, man, hey, I'm putting out a message that says, hey man, you may resonate with this because you may have been in this specific situation. And what an incredible impact everybody could have if they just, led with inspiration and humility, and to say, man, hey, I'm not perfect, but I've got some cool things that I want to share that I'm going through, that I'm in the journey too. You may relate to this, and what's the pay it forward fire that catches from someone looking around. And it's not like I have to look at like a David Goggins or a Joe Rogan or the ones that, we idolize as far as, performance. And, it's people, local, everyday people that are doing the deal in your community that go, man, you know what? I should walk every day, like that. I should walk every day. And as a result, it makes a big impact in people's lives. So I dig that, man.
Yeah. I think it's incredibly important because you don't realize people are watching. People are watching.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, I have this thing that whenever I meet somebody for the first time, I process it and say, okay, what if this is the last person I ever talk to? What are they going to say about Chris Welton? Because Chris Welton was an a-hole years ago. I was super cocky, arrogant. I made $1 million when I was 29 years old. Like, I had it all figured out, dude. Okay. And I hurt a lot of people's feelings and offended a lot of people because that's who I was along the way.
Yeah.
So now I'm 50 years old. I've been through all this crazy stuff in my life. I want to touch people, hopefully in a positive way, every time I see or meet somebody. Because if I step out here and I get hit by a bus, at least the last person I talked to was a good conversation.
Wow. So, man, let's unpack that real quick. So tell me the biggest difference between 29-year-old Chris and Chris today. Walk me through that.
I'm not chasing money, and I listen to people, and I take advice. I used to be just so cocky and arrogant that I didn't want to take advice from anybody. You couldn't tell me anything. I don't care who you are, where you've been. It was irrelevant to me. I had 5 cars. I I had a Hummer back when they first came out. And,
Yeah, I remember that.
And my Mercedes, I had an AMG Mercedes, and I had all these things, an Escalade and a Navigator. Like, I thought that's what success was, because when I was growing up, we didn't have those things. And I have a huge shoe issue, and we'll get into that in just a second.
No, I can see your shoe issue.
Yeah, I have a huge shoe issue. And I thought that money would cure all my problems and it would make me happy. And I wasn't happy in life with a lot of my personal things. My marriage wasn't good then, and just things weren't great. So I would throw money at it, and that's how I made myself feel better. So I would work and work and work and not pay attention to the kids and do those things. And I was very good at being able to make money. But my cockiness and arrogance cost me all that, because I wasn't treating the people fairly that I did business with when it came to respect and everything else. And I thought I knew everything. So I went from making massive amounts of money to having no money to pay my mortgage, to having no assets, and just craziness from there.
Gone.
How quick did that happen? Was that 3 years?
It was a couple years. I was
Pretty quick.
It was pretty quick, but I made it pretty quick too, and then I went through the doldrums of, you didn't deserve the money. Why did you even think you did? And had to get my head right through all that.
Wow.
And that just took time to understand that. But then I chased the money again. Like, that just became my thing. See, I'm the son of a drug addict, right? So my mom was addicted to drugs my whole life. So I saw how her relationships with money worked, right? I saw what she did with money. And for me, the drug was to make more money. I was never into drugs because I saw how that affected her.
Wow. So hold on, say that again. So for you, the drug was
Making money.
and obviously at the time you have no idea that's the case. This is probably from unpacking this years later. So.
Yeah, it definitely is, from going back and realizing that. Now, there are some good habits you get from a drug addict, how to make money, because you hustle and you can grind and you figure out ways to win and do those things. Yeah. But I had to hold on to it just wasn't my thing, because one, I thought I could always make more. But two, I didn't have any structure or baseline. Nobody taught me how to do anything with money, right? So when we grow up, we get the habits from our parents, right? Those are caught, not taught. Regardless of what I say about money to my kids, if I don't teach them, if I don't sit down and do the same thing with them that I do, it's irrelevant. So I had no basis for money. I was successful and I could make it, and I've made it multiple times. But when I stopped thinking about money all the time and helping more people, and I know this sounds crazy, but the money flows, right? It flows. I don't think about money right now. Yes, I love it, and I'm making a good income. I'm down incredibly from the previous 2 years, but I'm not sweating about that. Like, that's part of it.
How much of your so this is awesome. First of all, Chris, I appreciate you sharing this, because I know for a fact that there are a lot of people that are listening to this podcast right now that are either going through this right now, have been through this, or they are going to go through this, because everybody that listens to this podcast is an achiever, right? They want more. And there's this dichotomy of wanting more and wanting to be an achiever versus putting money at the centric of that, right? Like, so this is a huge thing that I think a lot of people could learn from, which I know this is part of your passion. So you lose everything at that point, right? You go through the pressure internally about all these questions, then you get right back on the horse and you chase it again. So walk me through, at what point did you meet some friction to go, hey man, maybe there's a different way here. Maybe this isn't working, or walk me through that transition.
I mean, it took a few different times to learn that lesson.
Really?
So I was very talented in the automotive industry, and I could get a job running car dealerships very easily. I had a good reputation. People followed me. I understood how to maximize profitability. I showed up to work. I didn't have a drug problem, right? Those are the things in the car business. If you have those, you can get a job almost anywhere. I always had success everywhere I went, because I was able to motivate the people around me and take them to the next level and help them grow. And I was highly compensated for that. But I would say I was going to be disciplined. I'd be good with my money. I'd do this, and then I would spend it all again. And then I would do it again. And I would do it again. And I got divorced in 2011, which was one of the best things that ever happened to me. I was putting up with a relationship that I didn't need to put up with. I wasn't going for somebody to help make me better and grow. So I fell into that trap as well. I sat down at my dining room table in my small rental house because I'd lost my big house that I had. Wow. And I wrote out the things that I wanted in my next partner. Very descriptive. And if this offends anybody, then I'm sorry.
You're not offending
But
anybody.
I literally said, I want her to be tall, dark hair, athletic, can pay her own bills because I hadn't had that ever in my life. Catholic, never been married, no kids. I was told if I write it down and I focus on it, then those things I'm going to be able to process.
So you probably took some things that you learned from.
I learned it from The Secret,
right?
From The Secret, right?
Right. And then you're like, okay, how do I transfer this to some other areas of my life? And
yeah. And what was important for me was realizing and giving myself permission to understand that I deserved better than what I had been accepting. That was one of the things too, when you're raised by someone who's an addict, any of the attention they give to you, you accept. So anybody that gave me attention, I accepted it, whether it was good or bad. And I realized that I needed more than that. So I did what most divorced guys do. I dated a little bit, and then I decided that wasn't for me. And I got a wart on my hand from the gym. This is a crazy story, so you guys will love this. A guy who works with me, his wife worked at a dermatology office. So I say, hey, Chris. His name is Chris as well. I said, Chris, can your wife get me in on a Thursday? I don't know what they need to do, but I'm off on Fridays. Get me in Thursday at the end of the day so I don't have to mess with it. He's like, yeah. I get the appointment. I go in. I walk into the office, and they put me in this room. They shut the door. And a few minutes later, I hear this voice outside the door. And it's this woman. And she says, who put a new patient on my schedule at 4:00? You knew I had an appointment after work. Like, oh man, this is not going to be good. I'm already embarrassed because of ward anyways. Like I just was embarrassed. So in this woman walks, and the nurse that's with her walks in, and she looks at my hand and she sees my ID, where I'm from. She's like, because I traveled 90 minutes each way to work. So I was from a total other side of Indiana.
Wow.
And she says, why are you here? Like, because I work here in this area or whatever. I felt something, a connection with her, but I'm like, okay, well, that may just be nerves or whatever. So she zaps the wart off my hand. As she's walking out of the room, I see her look at the nurse, and she holds a clipboard over her face, and she's talking. And I figured it was about me. Maybe it's just my ego, but I thought maybe it was about me. So I get back to work, and I ask Chris, I said, hey, is Nicole single? He goes, let me find out. He calls his wife. She's single. I'm like, awesome. So 6 weeks later, I go for my follow-up appointment. I just wanted to make sure that she was
the appointment.
I did not. I was good. I was good. I was good. And I had talked. I'd been in Florida the week before, and I told my friends that, hey, I'm going to go check this out. I want to go back in there. I'm going to ask her out. And Jason's like, yeah, she deserves. She's great for you, and she'd be lucky to have you. And then my buddy Jay Ellington, I don't know if you're Jay Ellington or not, but Jay's like, dude, she's out of your league, bro. So that's typical guys I grew up with. So I go in there. It's the same thing. I felt the same way. I called her office, and I tried to leave a message, and they're like, okay, what's your date of birth? I said, it's not that kind of message. They said, well, we don't take personal messages for providers. I said, cool. Just write my name and number down, give it to her. If she calls me, she calls me. So she called me. I asked her if she's single. She said she was. I asked her on a date. She said yes, which I wasn't ready for that. In sales, I was ready. I had like 6 different ways I was going to handle the objection. Right? But she said yes. I was like,
you what?
I don't know what to say. And that was in August. That was our first date was August 11th, 2012. So we've been married for be 6 years in April.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Incredible story.
But I shared that with you because I want you to understand how important it is to know where you want to go and be super descriptive about it. You need to be that way with everything in your life. And the stuff I'm working on right now, besides helping CMP grow to $1 billion origination company, I'm also working on my speaking and my coaching and my podcast. And I'm very detailed on where I want it to go. Like I have it written down, my coach, and I go through this thing called the 411 that breaks everything down. And I have multiple verticals that I do. I want to be the #1 podcast host in the world, right? That's where I want to go. And I know what it takes to do that. It takes 200 million downloads per episode, which is crazy because I'm getting like 70 downloads an episode right now. But I need to know where I want to go to get there, right? Joe Rogan's #1, right? I don't understand that still. I like Joe, but it's like...
Shout out to Joe.
Yeah, I love Joe, but it's 2 hours of guys just sitting there talking just bullshit. So, but but I know where I want to go with it. Right. So I'm super focused and vigilant on getting those things done.
Man, that's awesome. God bless.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for sharing that, by the way. That's really cool, the intimacy of being able to share your past. And, it's also too, I find, for me, which I'm learning to be better with this right now in my young career, is it's easy to talk about the pains once you've been past them. And what I'm trying to be better with is talk about openly things that are challenging that I might be, I don't want to use the word battle, but our coach says dancing. I'm dancing with while I'm in it, because and maybe that's just inherently the way that it is, because you know how it ends. But that's really cool to be able to share that with people that are going, oh my gosh, I thought that was just me. Oh, wow, he struggles with that too. Okay, that's a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. So what a really cool reason to get up out of bed every day, Yeah.
One of the things I really like what Ed Milet shares is, and this is true for me, so you really will enjoy the person you meet on the other side of adversity. Okay, so the loss of my son was the most adverse, tragic thing that's ever happened to me, and pray to God that the worst thing that'll ever happen to me. But I do like the version of Chris Welton that I met on the other side. And I think a lot of people get caught up in the adversity in their life, and they don't let themselves grow past it and realize that was there. Something was put in your life for a reason. You need to grow from that and figure it out. Look, I had a tough time with my relationship with God after my son passed was not very good. It just wasn't. I didn't understand it. I had a hard time processing it. But the person that I am today compared to what I was before that happened is someone that I know that my son is proud of. Okay. And every day when I get out of bed and I put my feet on the floor, the first thing I think about is, what can I do to be better than I was the day before with that part of my life? And I have mornings where I don't want to get out of bed. I'm a human, right? I just days where I don't want to do that. But then I draw strength from the adversity in the past, the things that I've been through, the challenges, the things I've survived, to give me the strength to push forward. And I learned that because too many people go back to the past and then they live there and they dwell there, and that's the reason why they don't do things. So you have a choice. In this morning's book, and Goggins talked about he's done all these things in life when he shouldn't have, right? It would have been okay for him to be 400 pounds. It would have been okay for him to be a drug addict or in jail or anything else because of the way he was raised. He decided to make a decision to do something different. Like, I had family members literally tell me when I was a kid, Chris, it's okay if you get in trouble, if you turn into a bad kid, because how crappy the situation was in your life growing up. I never gave myself permission to do that, but I think too many people do. Look, we've all had challenges. We've all had bad things happen in our life. It's what we do after that matters. And I put myself in rooms all the time with people that I know have been through adversity in their life. And that's the reason why we're in the same room, to grow together. And that's what I told the guys on the call today. I had all the guys on the call. I said, everybody on this call is on this call for a reason, because I gave you permission to be in my life. But you've all been through some crazy stuff, and that's why we bond. But everybody's got a story. Yeah. Everybody does.
Which sounds like to me that it can either be your excuse or your reason.
For sure.
How do you turn that into jet fuel instead of turn that into a roadblock? So
I love that analogy.
But that sounds good when you're out of it. When you're in it, it's tough.
Well, you need to have people to rely on. And when I was talking to Damon West the other day, I asked him that question. I said, "What would you do different, or what do you wish Damon West knew before he went into prison that you know now?" And he said, "To ask for help." And I wouldn't change anything I've been through in my life, and that's what him and I got in a real detailed conversation about. Everything I went through, even all the bad decisions I made, were to put me where I am right now. So I wouldn't go back and change any of those things. Yeah. But he's like, the one thing I wish I would have done is ask for help. He said, I'm okay with everything that happened. I mean, he went to prison for 8 years and did all these things, but now he's changing lives every single day. He says he's a smuggler of hope, which I absolutely love that.
Love that.
Yeah, that's just what makes it so interesting. Just listening to your story, it's almost like the harder it is, the better story you get to share. And that brings the uniqueness that just is magical. And
who wants to follow a perfect human? I want to follow imperfect humans that have figured out a way to overcome that. You know, like that's the people that I want to follow. That's the person I want to become. I want to be as imperfect as it gets, but find tools and resources from other people who have done it and figure out how to make this vessel better. And I just have a tremendous amount of respect for your story and what you've been through, but more importantly, what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Here's some advice I'd give someone if they were looking for a coach and they were going to interview coaches. A lot of the coaches out there are going to come to you about all their success stories. I want to know about your losses. Okay. I want to know about the struggles you've had in life, how you've overcome those things. What are your current struggles? Because those are the things that are going to help me. Your wins aren't going to help me, right?
God, that's
Seeing
so
you
good.
win, that's great, right? Like, so, we see, Kobe Bryant, one of my favorite all-time basketball players. We saw all the things he did on the floor, but unfortunately, until he passed away, nobody really knew what he did behind the scenes. Very few people did.
They just knew he was a sicko.
Knew he was a sicko, 100%. And I'm all Kobe. Like literally, we were connected somewhere because I'm the same DNA with that. But share those stories with me. Share the 4 a.m.s in the gym, or share the business that failed or your marriage that failed and how you overcame that. I think that just builds so much more value for who you are, other than, hey, everything in my life's been great. It's been good. I've done all these things. And if you looked at me from the outside, because I did graduate from a really nice school in Orlando, you would think that I was like a lot of the people that went there. I wasn't the case. I got to go to school there for free. But the value that you bring to the marketplace is more about your losses than your wins, as long as you've been able to overcome them. Now, if all I've done is just sit in my doldrums and lose all the time, different story. But I want to know about your struggles, man.
Yeah. It's so much more relatable, and it's so much more
Useful.
It's so much more useful, right? And therefore, inherently, it's more valuable, right? And, our success in life is predicated by the value that we bring to other people around us. So, if you're going through something right now or you're in it, just know that that's a gift if you choose, as Chris would say, if you choose for it to be that. So, well, man, I can't thank you enough for stopping by. This is super exciting. I know we're the first stop on your trip today, and for those of you that are listening, man, this has just been a treat. Let the audience know. I know there's a bunch of places they can find you. I know you're super active on social, and I know you're big on Instagram. I don't know if you're.
I am. Yeah. So the best way to reach me would be one hand at a time on Instagram. But you guys have my link tree, so I'll have that in. You guys will put that in the show notes so they can click that. That's probably the best way to connect. You have my contact information in there, and you can connect and see my podcast.
Yeah, man. And those go right now. If you're listening, you're in the car, wherever you are, one hand at a time, download the podcast, subscribe to that, give them some love. I'll tell you what, if it's a tenth of what you shared today, I'm going to be your #1 subscriber, man.
I appreciate that, man.
An absolute blast. By the way, Chris will be walking through the airport. I think was it today, or do you have these on order?
I've got them on. They'll be on today.
He's got this shirt, and then on the back is a QR code. And so, like, literally when he's in line, he's walking through, you can literally shoot the QR code and it goes to your link tree.
I want to
with all
get
your
somebody
stuff.
to video you walking to see how many people are shooting that thing from afar.
So sick. I love it, man. Marketing wins.
Yes,
Marketing wins.
It does, for sure.
Chris, thank you so much, man. Absolute pleasure. Your story
thanks,
is
guys.
inspirational, and I can't wait to see, how this next chapter plays out. And I'm going to go ahead and be selfish and try to book you again, because I know that the next 6 months of your career and your chapter will look very different than it is today.
Love to come back.
Cool.
Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having you. I appreciate it. Man, guys, thank you so much for joining. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do so. For those of you that are in the heat of the battle today, remember, life is not meant to be extraordinary. Life is not meant to be ordinary. Ladies and gentlemen, it's meant to be extraordinary. Bye-bye for now.